Welcome back, everyone, and thank you. This is Collins again. I'll be introducing the track two. So in track two, everyday digital life, which explores how individuals can navigate always connected world with greater awareness, balance, and intention. As digital tools continue to shape how we live, work, and relate to one another, the challenges before us is learning how to use technology in ways that support focus, well-being, and meaningful human connection. To begin this conversation, we are joined by our track two key speakers, Oluwatosin Olabode, a certified digital wellness consultant and an author of Digitally Well. Over to you, Oluwatosin. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much. Super excited for how the conversation is going so far. I think across today and tomorrow, certain conversations, certain mindsets, certain principles will keep repeating themselves. One is the idea that this conversation cannot be complete without the concept of intentionality. And second is that we are now in an era where there's hardly anything that we want to do that doesn't require one form of technology or the other. And so we must begin to look at the conversation that thriving in the digital age is not about using technology less. It's about using it more intentionally. When we host conversations across different groups of people that we work with, and they hear the concept of digital wellness, one of the first thoughts that comes to their mind is, oh, you're telling us to drop our phones, you're telling us to drop our devices. We are talking on an adult track, for instance. Now, your devices are probably what you use to earn a living, how you communicate with your family, spread across the world. So the conversation cannot be, do not use tech. The conversation cannot even be less tech, as the case might be. The conversation is building templates and structures to ensure that we are using them in a way that is intentional. Something that we see when we engage with people also is that we are the most connected era ever been. Yet a lot of people are complaining that we are the most disconnected that we've ever been. During the children track, we spoke about modeling. For instance, how do you communicate with your child? There's a concept called phobing, the idea of using your devices while in interaction with other people. And so you might be connected physically with that person, but you are distracted. And so the quality of presence is lost in that engagement. And so we'll be looking at the conversation today beyond just being present, beyond just surviving and navigating the digital space without structures, without systems, without templates. We're going to be looking at how to actually thrive in the digital space. For us to have a clearer picture of why this conversation matters, we need to first observe where we currently are, because the world we live in now is not the world that used to be years ago. The world we live in now is different from the world that was 20, 30, 40 years ago. And so technology is no longer a tool. Technology is now an environment. And so in the same way that you will find yourself in your office, in your places of worship, at home, in different environments, and how those environments are able to impact you positively or negatively, it's in the same way that the digital space is now an environment that has the capacity to impact you positively or negatively. The simplest definition for mental health, for instance, is our ability to think, our ability to feel, our ability to respond to life circumstances. And you will agree with me that within the digital space, we can be impacted positively or negatively in the context of how we think, in the context of how we feel, and in the context of how we behave. And so technology is no longer a tool. It is now an environment. We no longer long in on digital platforms. We live inside this system. Like I mentioned earlier on, there's hardly anything that we want to do right now that doesn't involve one form of technology or the other. And so digital spaces now sit alongside other environments that we move through, and we need to begin to look at life from that perspective. So in a world like this, the question becomes, what does it actually mean to live digitally well? What does it actually mean to live digitally well? Digital well-being is not about avoiding technology. Like I said, most times that's the first point of thought that people have when we engage with them. Digital well-being is not about avoiding technology. in today's world, avoiding technology is not even possible, because how do you communicate with your family members that are across the world? How do we host this kind of summit if the conversation is no technology? It's impossible. We're in an era where technology is super important. And so the conversation is not about avoidance. Living digitally well is about designing a way of life where technology supports human flourishing, where we can use digital tools productively while avoiding the associated harms that come with it. Technology is not the enemy. Unexamined digital habits are the challenge. I will repeat that again. Technology is not the enemy. Unexamined digital habits are the challenge. And one of the things that research is showing us more recently is, take this scenario. Imagine that I spend 5 hours on social media, for instance. Let's use that as our case in point. Imagine that I spend 5 hours on social media and I'm using it productively. I'm able to take screen breaks in between those 5 hours. I'm able to learn the things that I'm setting to do. I will leave that 5 hours with a better template for life, having achieved what I set to achieve. Now, compare that 5 hours of productive use of technology with somebody that spends just 20 minutes on social media, but is using it negatively. Is using it for social comparison. Even though the amount of time is spent is smaller, the consequence on a negative perspective is going to be way larger. So technology in itself is not the enemy. You have to also remember that technology is neutral. It doesn't create itself. So we are the creator and the users of technology. And so it's our biases that show up in grid when we create systems that do not help put checks and marks for people to use it. Because once the goal for you as an organization or as an individual in an organization is profit, then whether you are hurting people or harming the environment, it doesn't matter as long as you're meeting your bottom line. Is these people, their biases that show up in the products and designs that we create. And then it's still us not being fully grounded in ourselves. For instance, that use technology. So someone that is grounded, when they engage with technology, they are able to better improve their mental health in comparison with somebody that is not grounded in themselves. So a question that I ask when we engage with teenagers, for instance, is this: are you defined by the number of likes you get on your posts? Because there's a very powerful quote that I love to share. It says, it's not what people say about you that hurts you, it's what you believe about what they say. So if you get on the digital space and you are not feeling yourself, and then somebody alludes to that, it's easy for you to be negatively impacted. So I'm emphasizing this because this is the foundation for every conversation that we're having. Technology in itself is not the enemy. Unexamined digital habits are the challenge. Because when there is no clarity, when there is no structure, when there is no structure to how we're navigating technology, then we begin to drift. And the problem with drifting is that it's so slow a process that it's always too late before you observe it. And so you just wake up one day and you're like, how did I get here? How did I do this? How did I become this? That's the problem with drifting. Drifting is one of the biggest hidden costs of constant connectivity. When digital habits are unexamined, certain patterns often appear. So whether it's fragmented attention, case in point, in a family setup, for instance, and that's why you will notice in the children track, they're saying you have to have designations where there are no phone policies. That's what we do in the No Gadget Hangout. We create systems where we can have honest, deep thought conversations, void of digital distractions, because we're in an era where conversations, we're in an era where discussions, we're in an era where engagements are now fragmented. So in the case of family, you are communicating with your family members, everybody has gone out, you've come back in the evening. When it's time to bond, everybody is pressing their phones. And then after 3-4 hours, everybody says good night, they go to sleep. You were physically present, but there was no emotional connection. Let's take that to the context of the workplace. For instance, you're supposed to do deep work, but notification keeps taking you off. And after 30 minutes, you're wondering, what did I even go to in the online space? And so one of the consequences of an unexamined structure, unexamined life, is fragmented attention, is emotional fatigue, because every information, it's not every information you need to consume. Just because something is valuable doesn't mean it is valuable to you. Just because something is valuable to you now doesn't mean it's going to be valuable to you later. And so we need to be able to compartmentalize the things that we engage with, because you are waking up, the first thing you're doing is you're picking up your phone and you're consuming the mindset that will form your day. You probably see a negative post online and it has spoiled your mood, and you carry that mood into your workspaces. One of the dangers of unexamined lives, of unexamined digital usage, is emotional fatigue. And then reduced presence. I already spoke about that, so I won't emphasize much on that. The effect is usually builds up slowly. This creates a quiet system of drifting from thriving into simply surviving. There is a very thin line between thriving and surviving. So the question becomes, do you go online to escape boredom, or is being online the reason why you're bored? There's a very thin line between whether you are surviving the digital space and how you use it across your personal, professional, and social life, or are you thriving within this space? So having said this, the question now then becomes, how then do we thrive in a digital world? Before we answer this question, I want us to consider three key I want us to look at three key considerations, because these considerations we give templates to when we talk about the pathways for flourishing digitally. And the first is our identity and our inner life. It's who you are offline that shows up online. Long-term change really happens through discipline alone. One of the reasons why we struggle with New Year resolutions is not because we don't have a heart for the things that we want to do. It's because we've not built the character, the nature, the identity to do those things. So you can't change a behavior if you've not changed it at a point of identity. So long-term change really happens through discipline alone. Discipline is super important in our journey to change. But what I see a lot of times in the context of this conversation is people focus a lot on discipline without a structure. I give a classic example. We were consulting, or we were coaching a lady in Bauchi State University a couple of years ago, and I wrote about this in my book. And one of the resolutions that we made is for her to take advantage of the digital wellbeing feature on her device to ensure that she's spending less time on our social media platforms. It is the same her that will go and unlock it when the time has elapsed. And so discipline is good, but you have to have the character that backs it up. It happens through identity. When people begin to see themselves differently, they set the template for behavior change. For example, someone who believes I protect my attention will make very different choices from someone who believes I am not able to control my attention. I mean, we're in an always on culture, and so it's not my fault. It's technology's fault. It's technology's fault. That person's behavior will show up differently. Technology does not always only shape what we do. It also shapes who we become, because you will check it in the statistics that was shown during the framing of this conference. The average person in South Africa, for instance, spends 3 hours on social media, 3 hours plus on social media. In Nigeria, it's not far off. Across Africa and across the globe, it's not far off. And that's just social media on one platform. And a lot of us have multiple devices running across our laptops, our iPads, our phones. How many hours cumulatively are we spending across all these devices? So technology does not only shape what we do, it also has the capacity to shape who we become and how we experience life. Digital habits influence the stability of our attention, the tone of our emotions, and the ability to reflect and our thinking processes, essentially, whether they become of meaning or not. When attention is constantly fragmented, both our identity and our inner lives become reactive rather than intentional. So we are reacting to what the world is showing us rather than building templates and structures to navigating the digital space. Another classic example is this. When we engage with freelancers, there's something that we say: if you don't have working hours, you will work every hour. What that then means is that your clients are the ones that are in charge of your day, not you. So without structure, what I'm trying to emphasize is that without structure, you are no longer in control of your technology use. Technology use is in control of you. So you're having a board meeting, but your notification is not put off. Notification pops up, you are quickly checking it. Technology is in control of you, but it's so subtle a line that we are not noticing these changes. And so when attention is constantly fragmented, both our identity and our inner lives become reactive rather than intentional. Living digitally well means protecting the conditions that allow for clarity, reflection, and meaning to grow. It is the strength of who we are offline, our beliefs, our behaviors, and our standards that ultimately show up in our online lives. The second principle, or the second consideration, essentially is relational presence. Humans essentially were not built for isolations. We are built for relationships. Yet digital habits have begin to quietly reshape how we show up present. for one another, checking our phones during conversations, divided attentions during family engagement, conversations interrupted by notifications, like I mentioned earlier on. And one key thing I want you to take from this conversation is that attention signals care and respect. And so if I'm having a conversation with you and you bring out your phone and you are pressing it, it shows a sense of disrespect. Let's be honest with ourselves. We might not want to say the truth, but it shows a sense of disrespect. Attention signals care and respect. When people feel listened to, relationships deepen. Over time, these moments influence emotional availability. It influences trust. It influences the depth of our connection. Living digitally well means practicing relational presence, giving people the kind of attention that makes them feel seen, heard, and valued. And I leave you with this thought in regards to relational presence. How do you feel when you're engaging with somebody and they begin to use their devices? And you're telling them, I'm trying to tell you something, and they're saying, oh, I'm listening to you. And in the same breath, they're saying, oh, sorry, what did you say? I thought you said you are listening to me. The third consideration is rest and recovery. In a constantly connected world, rest is no longer automatic. We must automate rest. Automatic is something that happens on its own. Automation is something that you create. We must begin to automate rest, because if you don't, the way society is structured, you won't have time for it. There will always be something that needs to be done. There will always be money that needs to be made. We call it the hustle culture. But at what cost? You make all the money, but your health isn't intact. It must be intentional. For instance, you must decide to take screen breaks and not just breaks. Somebody spoke about this, I think, during the children's section. We're now in an era where, because you've worked for 5 hours on your devices, you want to rest for like 30 minutes, you switch from your laptop to your phone. It's still screen time. So you must be intentional to take screen breaks, not just breaks. Because digital environments are designed for continuity, not for closure. There's always another message, another update, another piece of context. Without rest, attention weakens, emotions become strained, and our capacity for meaningful engagement reduces. What often follows is fatigue and a quiet drift into survival mode. And think about it. If you've been working for 5 hours, rate your output when you started in the first hour with the last 5 hours. If you didn't take any break, you will still get results. It's just that the quality will reduce. And so that's where rest and restoration is super important. So as I begin to wrap up, what are three? I'm going to share 3 pathways to thriving in 2026. There are a lot of pathways, but I'm just going to be sharing 3. And the first is the law of intention and attention management. If you know what you should be doing, you will know what you shouldn't be doing. Intention essentially overviews your why and your what. So why do I want to do this, and what is this thing that I want to do? And then attention is your how and your when you are achieving that thing. Whatever has your attention has your life. Attention is one of the most valuable human resource that we have right now. Living digitally well means learning to direct attention intentionally rather than surrendering to algorithms. I give a classic example. You want to send a DM on Instagram. When you open your phone, the first thing you see is not DM, it's your feed. What intentionality is talking about, what attention management is talking about, your ability to overlook those feeds and go into the DM. So a person that is intentional will go to what took him to that platform. A person that is not intentional will be carried away by algorithms. And after 30 minutes, you're wondering, what did I even come to do? The second is the law of scheduling. What gets scheduled gets protected. And one important thing that we must realize is that when you know the things that you need to get done, you give your brain the permission to focus on other things. Because what happens a lot of times with multitasking is your brain is telling you, oh, you said you have 5, 6, 7 things that you want to do. Let's do them. Because you've not allocated time slots to it. But if you are able to allocate time slots to the different activities, and this is obviously, there's no one size fits all, and it's also very flexible. If you've been able to allocate time to the different activities that it is that you want to do, when you're doing activity A, because your brain knows that activity B is supposed to be done by 5 o'clock, it won't be disturbing you when you're doing activity A. So that's essentially the overview of what scheduling talks about. I'm trying to rush because I have just a few more minutes. And finally, the power of social prescribing. Social prescribing essentially ensures that people remain connected to community groups, shared activities, and social environment. This is one of the superpowers that we have as Africans, because we're connected, we're communal people. And you see technology even try to mimic this in the designs of the tools that they create. So whether it's FaceTime and all of that, just trying to bring that face-to-face human interaction, because the best form of interaction, the first form of engagement is physical communication. And so social prescribing gives a platform to doing that. And in our organization, doing Healthy Africa, one of the ways that we achieve that is through the No Gadgets Hangout, which is a 2 to 3 hour interactive moment void of digital distraction, where I can have honest, intentional conversations with you across different conversations, void of digital distractions. And one of the ways we achieve it is through our Vivify card games. You can see some of the pictures on the screen. They are conversational prompts that help us start these conversations and host meaningful conversations. Finally, everything that I've said is anchored on self-awareness. The idea not that you are being overly conscious of yourself, but the fact that you're able to monitor your interactions with technology. If I'm saying I am picking my phone for activity A, am I able to pick it up, do activity A, and drop back the phone? Am I able to, what do I feel when I navigate the digital space? After that board meeting, how do I feel? After social media time, how do I feel? Because without your ability to observe, you don't know what needs to change. Living digitally well is a way of life. And I'm hoping, because this conversation, this summit that we're having is a start to this conversation. It's not the baseline, it's not the concluding part of it, it's just activating the conversation. And I'm hoping that across the 2 days interaction and the templates that we're building after the summit, we can keep these conversations going.